of such damage. So you've got what it feels like in the body, but also the emotional component to it. And this is often overlooked in the medical model, where we just focus on the body and try to give medications or drugs or injections to help pain, which can be helpful. But unless we really deal with the emotional experience, we are not going to optimally treat this. And the gut has got everything to do with emotions, as you're going to find out soon. So the problem is we need to move away from this biomechanical approach to the body and to dive into not only the mind-body connection, but also the mind-body-brain-gut connection, because the four of these domains are interconnected intimately, and we can change our overall health status and our chronic pain status by addressing the gut connection along with the brain, the body, and the mind. So Einstein said, or it was proposed that he said, that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. And this talk is really about doing something different in your life that can literally radically change it for many people. And I strongly encourage you to take this to heart and do some research yourself and start implementing some of the advice that I'm going to be giving today. And I can just say that I've been sharing this information with my patients, and I've got hundreds and hundreds of patients now who are doing this. And I would say the more they take this on and embody it, the more results they're getting. And it's not just pain, but it's a variety of benefits like more energy, clearer mind, so less brain fog. You know, the intestinal issues can settle down, like IBS or gastroesophageal reflux disease symptoms. That's like heartburn. But patients with palpitations resolve. I've had patients with throat congestion, sinus problems. So a variety of different inflammation-associated conditions are treated with this approach. And it's purely through what you eat. So an anti-inflammatory diet, you may think, well, is this a new concept? Well, not really, because Hippocrates, the father of medicine, roughly 2,400 years ago, said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And now we have got the science to back this up. And we're going to be talking about this today. So this slide is really diving into a lot of properties of the gut-brain connection and starts to illustrate the fact that your stomach, with its intestine, as you can see in the center of the diagram, is literally changing how your brain functions all the time. Every meal that you have, every snack that you have is literally changing how your brain operates. And as you can see on the right of your screen, on the magnified version, you've got little cylinder type structures, and they are bacteria or bugs. And we have 10 times the number of bacteria and other microorganisms, 10 times the number than the cells in our bodies. So just think about that for a minute. Our body's got approximately 30 trillion cells, but the bacteria and protozoa and other microorganisms are about approximately 300 trillion cells. And this is why they are essential to the health of us. Now, I was at a conference earlier in the year, and the surgeon, bariatric surgeon, stood up and she was talking about this and how this relates to our health. And it was the first time in being 20 years as a physician that I heard this from the lecture podium, that our gut microbiome is essential for our health. So I paid attention, and I went on to read lots of books over the forthcoming months. This is basically today is an accumulation of my reading, because there's a lot of information out there and it's very confusing. Patients go and say, well, what about this diet versus that diet? It's not really about a diet. It's about a lifestyle of understanding that your gut microbiome are being changed by the foods that we eat. And this is how it works. When we have certain foods that come into our stomach that are inflammatory in nature, they cause an inflammatory response on the lining of the intestine that cause a leak in the intestine. And the intestine is only one cell thick for the entire length, and it goes on for meters and meters long. And the intestine literally produces something called leaky gut syndrome. And this syndrome is not acknowledged in medicine yet, but I'm sure it will in the next number of years. If you Google it on Mayo Clinic, it's going to say, well, this is not quite strong science, or, you know, we can't really rely on this concept. But from the evidence of myself and the evidence of hundreds and hundreds of my patients, and also one of the authors I'll be talking about is Dr. Gundry. He's got 10,000 patients who are eating a diet that's low or no inflammatory proteins, proven by blood tests, basically showing resolution of not only chronic pain, but many conditions. And these conditions are heart disease, coronary artery disease, palpitations or arrhythmias of the heart. You've got stroke disease. You've got autoimmune disease like thyroiditis or thyroid conditions, SLE, and a variety of other different autoimmune conditions. You've got cancer, you've got diabetes, you've got obesity. And I would say for most conditions, you go to your doctors for your pills, for renewal, have likely got an inflammatory component to it. And we can change that, because when we change what we eat, these microbiomes in the gut literally change from the bad guys to the good guys, just to keep it simple. And when the good guys are running the show, we start to heal. Not only our gut heals with the intestinal symptoms, but also our whole body starts to heal, including the brain, including the nervous system, including pain. So these microorganisms have got DNA, and the genes within them are literally changed by what you eat. And that's why snacks, even one snack, can change how your gut microbiome is functioning and therefore make you symptomatic. Maybe, for example, for me, who has changed his diet radically this year, if I eat a classic would be a bowl of normal rice at lunchtime, then I get fatigued in the afternoon and my brain is foggy. Whereas if I eat it later in the evening, it's got less an effect because my microbiome changes as I go through the day, which is fascinating. But that's rather detailed, but just an illustration from my own experience. So let's move on and let's talk about the foods that are changing, that we can change to literally change your microbiome. Now, this slide is a combination of two things. It's bread and milk. Now, I had a conversation with a colleague called Robert Silverman this year on my podcast show, and I asked him the question, you know, what are the two biggest things that we could change to change your diet? And he said, if you stop gluten and stop dairy in your diet, you can get 90% reduction in inflammation. 90%. Now, I'm not too sure if I agree with that statistic, but that's his experience of his clients. And he's a chiropractic physician who has got multiple degrees in nutrition. He's well-trained and very knowledgeable in this subject and treats many, many patients. And that's what he said. So bread and milk. Now, there's a bit more to it, which we're going to dive into as we move forward. So please get the questions going, because I know you're going to have questions whenever you hear what I've got to say. And I think it's maybe a good point. You know, there's several approaches to this. One would be, right, thank you very much, Dr. Wayne, for your information, but no, thank you. I'm not going to do anything that you say, and I'm just going to continue what I eat. And that's fine. I respect that. The second approach is I will do everything you're going to say, and I'm going to start it as soon as possible. And if that's your approach, kudos to you. Great. You will get the quickest results. And that will take about 3 to 4 weeks of diet change before you start to reap the benefits. And the other approach, which is kind of the middle road, which many people take, is like, well, I'm going to integrate some of these changes slowly over time, and therefore slowly eat up what I have at home. And as I move forward in my life, I'll buy different foods and I will slowly correct the issues associated with inflammation in my health. And I completely respect that. It's very, it's a common sense approach for many and more practical for many. So one tip would be to stop eating bread and stop eating or start drinking milk. And an alternative for cow milk would be goat milk or almond milk. So these are two things you could do off the bat while you change your pantry cupboard and change the foods in your fridge and hopefully make these changes. So let's move forward. The slides here today are just a collection of different foods that will stimulate some conversation around the different food groups. So as you can see here, there's a couple of salads. And at the end of this journey, many people end up eating lots of fruit and vegetables, lots of vegetables and salads, as you can see here. There's a variety of foods on these plates, some of which you'll learn by the end that are maybe not too healthy from an inflammatory perspective. And it's interesting because you would think if you're eating salads and vegetables, that's all healthy and it's all good for you. And it is in lots of ways. But in other ways, some of the foods are causing inflammation and we need to be aware of what they are. So a bit of a teaser really as we go forward, because we're going to come to the end of the slides and you're going to know which foods in these two plates are more healthy from an inflammatory perspective. So first is grains and carbs. You know, the majority of the Western diet is carbs, and much of that is grains. And I'm sure you've been told from childhood, and we're taught in schools that, and even at medical schools, that grains are healthy. You know, eat your whole grain bread and your whole grain rice. Well, it's interesting because if you look back in time at ancient civilizations, for example, the Egyptians, where they built the pyramids, there's archaeological evidence that the people who built the pyramids, the workers, were eating brown grains, brown rice, for example. And the pharaohs and the royalty were eating white rice. And there was a reason, because ancient civilizations knew that the husks on the rice were problematic for health. And the archaeological evidence shows that it was diabetes, it was heart disease and stroke disease, more prevalent in the common man than the royalty, which is completely opposed to what we're told or what many of us think and as a result eat. So there's definitely evidence for this that goes back thousands of years. And hence, Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and let medicine be thy food. So let's talk about grains. So let's talk about the grains that you would want to eat because they've got an inflammatory load. Now, one word that's described in the literature, written by Stephen Gundry in his book, The Plant Paradox, is lectins. That's Lectins, lectins. So lectins are present in many grains and carbs, but they're not present in wild yams or sweet potatoes. So this is a great alternative if you're going to swap your grains around. And the tip here would be to not eat bread, which we've mentioned, not eat rice, not eat oats. So I apologize for all the Scots out there who love their porridge oats, and also not quite a grain, but the normal potato. So these 4 different foods are causing inflammation in the body. Now, and many patients, say, but come on, what else am I going to eat if I don't eat my rice or my potatoes? Well, there is alternatives, and that's what we're going to talk about. So this is almond flour. Many cultures around the world are cooking all the time. East Indian population where I work, like their rotis or their chapatis, and they love their wheat flour. Well, an alternative to wheat flour is almond flour. So it's something you could buy and purchase, and if you're baking, you could use this instead of wheat flour. Coconut flour is an alternative as well, and also other coconut products like coconut ice cream, coconut yogurt, and a variety of others. Coconut milk, but not coconut water. A few other grains, millet. It's a picture of brown millet, and also sorghum. these are unusual grains that most of us don't use in the kitchen, but are definitely available at the grocery store. And these have no or next to no lectin load or inflammatory load, and they can be used in alternatives. In fact, one tip I give for people that love to eat porridge and oatmeal is to have millet porridge or millet cooked in the same way. So that's an alternative there. This is quinoa. The ancient Aztecs had a laborious process of removing the husks around quinoa to make it more health-oriented food. So it's not enough to just boil it up in a pan and then eat it after, half an hour or so. But if you're going to have quinoa, the tip would be to cook it all day in a slow cooker, so like 8 hours, or in a pressure cooker. And that way, the lectin content or the inflammatory content is much reduced. And this is one of the tips, if you're going to do this diet for, say, about 6 weeks to clean up the intestinal wall and heal the body, then you're going to reintroduce some foods that you love. This is what Dr. Gundry talks about in his book. And this is one of them, the quinoa. You can reintroduce this with this style of cooking, and then you lessen the load of lectins. And I will add as well the rice, because that's a big subject for 4 billion people on the planet who eat rice as their mainstay. And if you cook Indian white basmati rice and then you put it in the fridge and you reheat it, what's happening is the lectin load is much reduced. And therefore that's a way of eating rice that has little to next up no effect on your inflammation levels. So just a few tips, practical tips on the subject of grains and carbs. So let's move on to vegetables and salad. So much of the mainstay becomes vegetables and salads. And as you can see here, there are 3 different vegetables that are otherwise called nightshades. And what makes a nightshade? A nightshade is a vegetable that has seeds and skins. So the simple way here is if you eat these foods without skins and seeds, you will reduce or remove all of the lectin content. Or if you must have it, you can cook it in a slow cooker all day. That will reduce the lectin load remarkably, or a pressure cooker for a shorter periods of time. So many people eat these 3 vegetables as a mainstay in their diet. And maybe vegetarians or even vegans, but they're causing inflammation because of the skins and the seeds. 2 others in the same group would be eggplants and zucchinis. So 2 other vegetables of this group that can be cooked a certain way that will vastly reduce the inflammatory load. So we have a salad, and on the salad, it's mostly greens. You've got some feta cheese there from a goat, because goat products do not contain lectins. You've got some beetroot there, and you've got some spices and some herbs. So green salads with a few additions becomes the mainstay. And on the salad, it's important to use other polyphenols or antioxidants. These are compounds in nature that literally heal the gut, heal this leaky gut syndrome. So lemon is a wonderful addition. And also oils. You've got your olive oil, and this is a picture of balsamic vinegar. In fact, any vinegars, apple cider vinegar, any vinegar gives a wonderful flavor to the oil, and on the salad really enhances not only the taste, but the calories and the feeling of fullness from a salad. Because if you just eat salad without any oil, then you're not going to get the full nutritional benefit, and you're not going to feel full. And the reason for the oil is we need that to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A and D and E. So these are a few tips for the salads to make them tasty and to optimize the absorption of the nutrients within them. So let's move on to legumes, nightshades. So a little bit more than we've talked about. We've talked about the centerpiece. We've talked about peppers and tomatoes, and that's any pepper. So that could be chili peppers, bell peppers, etc. But let's bring in of legumes, because legumes is a mainstay of a vegan diet and much vegetarian diet, and they're very healthy foods. I'm all for legumes as a general mainstay for protein in the diet. However, if you don't cook them long enough, the lectins within these foods will cause inflammation in the body. So if you're going to use these foods, again, cook them all day in the cook them all day in the slow cooker or in the pressure cooker for optimal results. So that was the kind of the take home around legumes, and that's not only what you see beans here, but black beans, brown beans, chickpeas are all legumes that are extremely healthy when cooked properly. Let's move on. Meat and dairy protein. Many people eat meat and dairy, and what Dr. Gundry found, interestingly, that if you minimize the days of the month of eating meat, then you can still enjoy this wonderful food with all its nutrients, but you also keep the inflammatory level to low or next to zero. So you don't need to be a vegan to get optimal low inflammatory levels in the body, which is remarkable from his studying patients for over 10 years. So here's a few pictures of different meats and dairy products. So the big thing here with meat coming from animals is you're not just eating the meat or the animal meat, you're actually eating the food that they were given before they died. And that's just some food for thought, literally, because you want to be eating meat that is wild, if possible, like wild fish from the ocean. Eggs, omega-3 eggs are the best eggs because they're more free range. You don't want to be avoiding sort of battery chicken eggs and from factories churning out eggs at such a high scale. But when you think of meats, you got beef, you got bison, you've got pork. These meats are coming from animals that have been fed grains like corn and soya and general grains. And therefore, the food for the animals is inflammatory in nature. So when you're consuming these meats, they will be inflammatory in nature. And that goes with the salmon, as you see in the bottom left there, that looks rather light colored, therefore it's more likely farmed than it would be wild. So you want to avoid farmed salmon and fish. But overall, meat, if that's your liking, I encourage to eat it. There's lots of good things in there, and it's a wonderful resource of nutrition. And just one tip, we're told that we're supposed to eat about 40 grams of protein a day. That's the size of your fist or your palm. And when you do this diet, what actually happens is the need of protein goes down. Instead of eating that amount per day, you could eat it once per day. And the reason for that is you get lots of protein in vegetables, and you get lots of protein recycled in your gastrointestinal system or your intestine. So meat is a great thing to enjoy if that's your cup of tea. On the subject of dairy, cheeses, many of us love cheese. The cheese from a cow in the southern part of Europe has got a protein called casein A2, whereas the milk in Northern Europe and also North America has got casein A1. And the A1 protein has got lectins or inflammatory proteins. And therefore, regular cheeses from the local areas will have inflammatory proteins. Whereas if you focus on French cheeses like Brie and other soft cheeses from there, Swiss cheese, as you see a picture there, and also Italian cheeses, mozzarella or Parmesan cheese from Italy does not contain inflammatory proteins, and therefore your intestine will enjoy those if that's your preference. Goat products are great. They do not contain inflammatory proteins, so goat cheese, feta goat cheese, as was mentioned earlier, goat yogurt, even goat ice cream. And on the subject of yogurt, it's interesting because several of the authors, another one, Dr. David Perlmutter, who's written 2 books called The Grain Brain and also The Brain Maker, who discusses the microbiome in a lot of detail. He has the belief that it's okay to have cow-based yogurt because it's the fermented protein within the yogurt that changes its structure. And certainly the lectin load or the inflammatory load would be much reduced. Personally, I can tolerate yogurts without much effect. So I think for me, it's a great choice of food. But I would suggest a higher percentage of fat, which was more filling, it's more tasty, more creamy, and reducing the lectin load at the same time. So a few tips there on dairy. Healthy fats. Because if you're going to be eating lots of salads, lots of vegetables, less protein, and less grains, then you've got to get your energy from other sources. And fat is another macronutrient that will certainly fill you up. And don't be fooled by the term fat, because fat equals energy in the body. Fat doesn't equal fat or adipose tissue, the medical term for fat tissue. It equals energy. And you get more than double the energy per gram of a fat. Say a gram of fat versus a gram of carb versus a gram of protein. So double the energy from the healthy fats. So here's a few. You've got your olive oil on the left. You've got coconut oil, excellent for cooking. You've got avocado oil, excellent for cooking, wonderful for salads. And so these are a few oils that you can use in cooking and in salads that is extremely healthy and you can enjoy. Repeat picture here. So this is olive oil, wonderful oil to consume with not just your salads, but also in your vegetables. If you're having a plate of vegetables, so you could add this. It's very tasty and it will fill up your stomach and sense of fullness or satiety. So let's move on to fruits. This is a very interesting subject. I know most of us were raised to say an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and maybe that's true. But the subject matter on fruits comes down to fructose. Fructose is the juice in any fruit, and it's healthy for lots of reasons, but it does contain lectins. And therefore, if you have lots of fruits every day, you're increasing your inflammatory load. And that's why diets like the keto diet doesn't recommend high amounts of fruit. But the 3 fruits that have got the least amount of lectins and inflammation load would be avocados, and also figs and dates are great as well. Great sources of fiber. Berries, whether it be blueberries or strawberries or blackberries, they're advised to be eaten in season. And in season, that being season where you live, not season from local stores, but ship in the fruit from everywhere. And the reason is just to minimize the inflammatory load. But it's a personal choice. You know, Dr. Gundry talks about fruit as it should be seen as candy. Eat it now and again, but not every day or not all the time, several times a day. So again, once you've cleaned up your intestinal system, eating fruit, your body will tell you what is good. And I personally think eating fruit with a meal, if it doesn't cause any issues, is a great idea. You got your lemons that we mentioned before. Let's move on to the subject of condiments. So what are 5 condiments that you can start using right away that will change and start healing your gut? Mint, and that can be fresh or it can be dried. Turmeric or curcumin, the active ingredient. Black pepper. Cloves, ground up cloves is fantastic. And also cinnamon. Now this is wonderful added together with stir fry it can optimize your inflammatory state. And I strongly encourage patients to do this. And if you've only got 2 or 3 of these, I would start using them. So moving on to the subject I call fun foods. So these are foods that some of us will enjoy, but they've got low levels of inflammatory proteins. Dark chocolate, 70% or more is ideal. From a principle basis, I think organic is better if that's possible. Drinks, you've got red wine, it's fermented grapes and red wine. Enjoyed. I wouldn't drink too much for obvious reasons. You've got coffee and also tea are great foods and fluids to enjoy, and many of us enjoy these on a regular basis. The subject of cream, you get fermented cow milk to give you a high percentage cream. I personally think that's okay from a lectin load perspective, but if you prefer black coffee, that's wonderful. Vitamins and minerals. I'm not going to dive into this too much in detail because I don't have the knowledge, but the subject matters that I've read is just a few that I've used in the past, and like prebiotic supplements. Prebiotic supplements, you may not know what that is, but it's essentially feed for the probiotics. And it's you can get in foods like onion and garlic. So if you're cooking on a daily basis, onion and garlic along with the food is a wonderful prebiotic. And David Perlmutter in his book, The Brain Maker, says 12 grams a day of these foods is sufficient to optimize the condition of the intestine. Or you can buy, Dr. Gundry has his supplement there that you can purchase from his store at gundrymd.com. I mentioned probiotics. You can buy that in capsule form, 50 or 30 million bugs in a capsule, or you can get it in food. For thousands of years, cultures of fermented foods, and within the fermentation process, you get lots of probiotics. That's the healthy bugs in your intestine right now. So you've got kombucha, you've got sauerkraut, you've got kimchi, you've got yogurt, and also kefir. So these are foods that if you incorporate into your foods in a daily basis or even every meal, you will vastly improve your intestinal health. Omega-3s are a great resource this is an essential fatty acid, and I enjoy taking that with meals, and it just helps the absorption of your fat-soluble vitamins. And the D3 there, it's interesting if you ask the question, well, how much D3 should we take? That's vitamin D3. In the research, vitamin D3 is spoken more about like a hormone than it is a vitamin, because it's got multiple benefits from the heart, the brain, the immune system. And I recommend a dose of 5,000 units a day. If you get drop form, that's 5 drops. And that's excellent for healing your intestine. So just to finish off, the quote by Haruki Murakami, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And every time you put food into your mouth or drink liquid, you're making a choice. Are you making it towards a reduced pain state and a healthier state, or are you encouraging the suffering by upsetting the microbiome? For more information, I was mentioned here, The Plant Paradox by Stephen Gundry, The Grain Brain and The Brain Maker by David Perlmutter are great resources for the subject matter of this talk. And to summarize, in pain, we generally are unhappy about our state, and we want to be happy. And it's a whole body experience. It's not just taking a pill or one solution. For many, it's a healthy, happy intestine. For many, you need a happy brain, and what we do with brain-changing activities like cognitive behavioral exercises. And also a happy heart is essential to having a happy body and life. And at the end of the day, my hope for you is that you do integrate not only what we've talked about in webinar 4, but to go back through webinar 3, 2, and 1 to incorporate these modalities that definitely are helping my patients and have helped me in my journey as well with pain. And I'm sure everybody listening today live and also in the recording can take some message away to optimize their pain experience. So I think I'll just finish here. I'll hand it over to you, Heather. This is just all the references for this. And resources, there's a small amount of information on my website, waynephimister.com. My book, I'll just leave this up while Heather takes over and maybe present some questions.
All right. Wow, that was really interesting. You think you're doing all the right things and maybe not. So there was a couple questions about the information and it's where can they find more? It will be on our website along with the first 3. So you just have to go to our homepage, pipain.com, and they'll all be there. And this one will be up in maybe 2 days. It takes a few minutes to get it up there. So you can watch it again and again should you want to. So if you have any questions, please type them on your Q&A box and we'll be happy to answer them. While they're doing that, Wayne, do you want to just talk a little bit about what we were talking about before, about offering other opportunities?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I've really enjoyed being here for 4 months now, and I just thought it'd be a great idea to have an ongoing set of webinars, or maybe alternatives depending on the numbers and also the audience's requirements. Maybe more of an interactive session versus more of a presentation with some Q&As at the end. So there's a few different options, but I suggest that I continue to do these once a month for the next 12 months. So a commitment from me. I'll be honest, it will be an evolving subject matter because I continue to learn and I continue to share things with my patients and find different ways of helping people with pain. So it may be a deeper dive into one of these subjects, like, well, what about the more up-to-date information on vitamins and minerals? And that is a subject that I will be talking about because I'm learning more about that. And we could dive deep into each of these subjects today even, and just talk about one food group at a time and personal experiences and bounce ideas off and share my experiences. So these are options for the audience, and I look forward to being a part of that with the Patient and Pain Network.
Awesome. There is a question that's come up from Julia. Is rice vinegar okay? And is brown rice or white rice better?
Okay, so I missed the first. Was it which rice?
Is rice vinegar?
Rice vinegar.
Yes.
That's a great question. I think if you want to, all of it's okay if your body says it's okay. So I would suggest anything with rice in it, not to use it for 6 weeks while you do this, while your gut heals. But certainly after, try these different products. You know, vinegars are a great antioxidant that helps to heal the stomach. And for lots of reasons, I think we should have vinegar on a regular daily basis. But yeah, it's a trial and error approach.
All right. There's one more part to her question. Is caffeine inflammatory?
It's a great question. As far as I'm aware, no. I think if you have milk with it, it would be yes. If you have cream with it, it will be less than the milk. But you know, there's one thing to say here, that we're talking about inflammatory responses. We're not talking about intolerance. We're not talking about allergies, because there will be foods that people cannot eat because they're literally allergic to it. Maybe they get hives, maybe they get swollen throat, and therefore, even though it's on the yes list versus the no list of foods, that would not be the right thing to eat. So it is an individual journey for people with this advice.
Here's another question, just came up, a couple more. Is there a way to prepare bell peppers to lower the leptin load, peeling or blanching?
Great question. Most of us would remove the seeds anyway, but one tip I got from a patient who's a chef is to cut up the peppers and put it in the oven with oil around it. And then if you cooked it for however long it needs, half an hour, maybe 40 minutes, then if you take it out, put it in a bowl of water with cling film over the top, or cling film over the top, the steam from the vegetable rises and lifts the skin off, and you just peel it off. So that's an easy way.
All right, interesting stuff. There's another one here from Deanna. I've been on Topramate with fibromyalgia. I'm coming off it now, but my pain is increasingly exponential. I am already managing my diet and health and healing my gut with bone broth. Can you make a recommendation?
Well, I would say, in fact, this was a point I was going to bring up. You can Google plant paradox today, and the drop-down menu, look for yes list, no list. And that is Dr. Stephen Gundry's food list of yes, you eat them, and no, you do not eat those. So there's two lists. So my recommendation would be stop eating any of the foods on the no list right away. And then you'll be eating the foods on the yes list. So until you do this for about 6 weeks, you can't really fully make a decision on, is this working, or what about this, or what about IBS, and what about that? You know, I think you've got to really remove the offending agents within the food that is causing inflammation, and then you can trial and error. But IBS is one of those things that and GERD, or gastroesophageal reflux, those two things will get better if you do this. And if it doesn't, please email me. I'd love to hear.
All right. I think that's all the questions we have at the moment. Just another couple things about the ongoing webinars. We had talked about maybe doing them through the Zoom meetings, which means that you will be able to all have your picture along the top, and we'll be able to talk together in a much more collaborative way. It just means that we can't take more than 25 people at a time. So I think that would work really well. So we will certainly send notices out to all of you and through our general membership when the details are, well, we have the details, and you can register for them, or anyone that you're interested in. But we will also record those, and they can go on our website as well as good resources. So it's in the talking stage as far as working out what the best way to do that is. But I think it's a wonderful idea. And by the response to these webinars, as I mentioned, there was over 800 people have registered for the recordings of these webinars. So how cool is that? Wow. I see. Oh, here's a nice one. 2 thank yous and a great thank you from Michelle.
Yes, I tied in that email response to the last response. So yeah.
Okay. So there's nothing else right now except to give you the hugest big thank you for all of this amazing information and powerful learning that we can do as people living with pain. And the more we learn and understand, the better our life can be. So I thank you from my heart for all of this time that you've given us and all this information. And thank you all for joining the webinars. And it will be on the website within 2 days, and you'll be able to watch it again if you want to catch more information about the different foods. And I always get more out of the second time I watch something, just because I have a pain brain. It doesn't maintain it all. So anyway, thank you very much, Wayne. And we will keep you abreast of anything coming up. And Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank
And
you.
just a final comment, if there's any questions, there will be questions about this talk. There's no doubt about it. Please send your emails to Heather, and then she can forward them on to me. And I think we will be doing talks on this subject next year. So come along to the podcast. Sorry, come along to the Zoom recordings, and let's talk and let's get our individual questions answered, because it's very personal. And I've been doing this with hundreds and hundreds of people now. So I have a fair idea of how to get the best results. And I do it myself. So I've got personal experience as well.
All right. Well, we're lucky to have you. I see there's no more questions.
There's 5 questions.
There's another one here from Larry. Merry Christmas, he says. So.
All right. Okay. You've done it. Okay, good. Well, thank you so much. Time to go.
All right.
And we'll see you again in the new year. Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.